Hey everybody, Eric Steckel here. Just want to remind you to check out my buddies Dave and Ty on the NEZ SEZ show, Thursdays at 8 p.m., right on Dave's YouTube channel. I was a guest on the show a couple months back. We had a great time. So if you're a guitar player, you love guitar-related content, check out the show. You won't regret it. See you guys later.
We're live once again. It is February 18th of 2021, and you're on looking at NEZ SEZ, a place where musicians can get together and inspire each other to play more guitar. We have another amazing show tonight. How you doing, Ty? How are you?
Hey Dave, happy Thursday. Always great to be with you on Thursday evenings here on NEZ SEZ. I'm so excited about our guest tonight. A true virtuoso player that is so well-rounded, his music is really hard to classify. I mean, he embodies jazz and funk and rock and blues and R&B. Originally from Israel, Oz Noy started his professional career at 13 years old, playing jazz, blues, pop, and rock music. And by the age of 16, he was playing with the top musicians in Israel. Since 1996, he's been a resident of New York. He's made a huge impact locally and internationally, and in 2019 he released his 9th studio record. Listen, he has worked with some of music's most accomplished players. You know, the who's who in the industry: Gavin DeGraw, Harry Belafonte, Cyndi Lauper, Clay Aiken, Eric Johnson, one of my favorites, Steve Lukather, Josh Groban, Michael Bublé, Dweezil Zappa, Justin Timberlake, Bonnie Raitt. The list goes on, and we're so happy that Oz has agreed to join us for a conversation tonight. Please welcome to NEZ SEZ, Mr. Oz Noy. Oz, welcome.
Hey, Oz.
Thank you. Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good.
We're great.
Let's just say hello to the chat real quick. Ben Coombs, our trusty moderator. Dan of New Jersey.
Hey, Dan.
Thomas Santiago.
Hey, Thomas.
Dwight Bailey.
Dwight.
Let's see. Marky FX. Ty Price is here, of course.
I'm here.
Hugh Caldwell.
Hey, Hugh. Guitar Man 45 is here, Dave.
There he is. Richard
Vinny
Nesdall, my
5150,
father.
yeah.
My father is here every week. Nice to see you, Dad.
Good to see you.
Guitar Man 45. Vinny 5150 is here. Jimmy Carr is here.
Hey,
And
Jimmy
the list goes on, and we will say hello to more people as they come in the room. All right. So what's up, Oz? How are you?
I'm cool. Nothing is up. We're all hibernating.
I know. You enjoying the snow today?
No, I hate snow.
I do too. Can't stand it. Can't stand it. Just about 10 minutes ago, they finally plowed us out.
I know, it sucks, you know. It's like it's nice to watch it out of the window for like 2 minutes, and then you're like, okay, enough of this shit. Now let's move on with our lives, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so let's start this.
Yeah, Oz, we were chatting just a couple of minutes ago before we came live, and turns out you and I have a mutual acquaintance,
yeah.
and you're both from Israel with phenomenal jazz chops. Where does this love for jazz? How does this come about in Israel? Set the stage for us.
I don't know how did it come about. I just know when I grew up, and all my friends grew up. One of them we talked about, Amos Hoffman.
Yeah. Phenomenal guitar player. Great guitar player.
It's great, and there's a lot of great guys out there. Like I'm like whatever the generation is. But I guess at the time, there's just people like to listen to jazz in Israel, and there was pretty good education when I was growing up. But now there's a lot more, way better education, jazz education. So I think that's where it's coming from. You know, that you can go to music school and study jazz with really good teachers. That's pretty much it, you know?
Can you recall the moment where you said, where you heard something or you learned something where you said, this instrument is going to be with me for the rest of my life?
I have a funny story with the guitar. I didn't want to be a guitar player. I basically, I wanted to be a drummer. So I already was asking my mom to get me drum lessons, and she was looking for drum lessons for me. And then I had some kid in school. I was 10 at the time. And he asked me, he says like, hey, I'm learning guitar. You come to a lesson with me. So I went to a lesson with him. I don't remember it as being anything exciting. And I remember I kept going to lessons with the guy, with the teacher. And I don't remember anything that really grabbed me. I just remember kind of not really liking to practice and stuff. It wasn't anything special. So I don't really know what happened. I think one of the things that happened is my older brother started to play bass, and he was in like this kind of like high school band, you know, or middle school band. And his friend that was the main singer, songwriter in the band, started to come to our house and play, you know, Israeli songs and Beatles songs. And I think once I realized that I can do that, and he started to show me that, then I started to get into it. So the Beatles really was what grabbed me into guitar more than anything.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. And another funny thing that I just thought about today, actually, I don't know why, is, you know, I was strumming chords and whatever. But then another friend of my brother was a little more developed, and I went to take a lesson with him, and he showed me the pentatonic scale.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that changed my life, because you have 5 notes and they pretty much fit everything. And then suddenly I was like, wow, I can use those things and make some noise. And I think that those 2 things kind of really open up everything for me, you know, in a way.
You know, that's an amazing story. Dave and I have interviewed dozens of players, and the moment that I learned the pentatonic scale was that was my pivotal moment as well.
Yeah.
And it certainly was. And even today, the pentatonic kind of serves as the basis for me, no matter what I'm playing.
Yeah, sure.
And even if we're going to try to, you're a jazz player. I'm not a jazz player. I am a wannabe jazz player. But even in that context, I have found a way to utilize the pentatonic across, you know, different chord progressions. Yeah. And I think a lot of rock players don't really understand how that pentatonic scale, the tried and true, the one that they know the best, can be applied in a lot of different type of applications once you learn the breadth and depth of how to use it.
Sure.
I even use the pentatonic scale as my root scale when I'm playing modally. And Dave and I were having this conversation last week, you know, around Lydian. You know, it's like, okay, well, which pentatonic shape, if you're playing an A Lydian, which pentatonic shape do you tend to gravitate towards playing when you're playing in that scale? And so if you have that under your hands, that is so useful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the pentatonic changed my life as well.
In jazz, you use pentatonic on. My opinion is scales are for every kind of music. It's not that there's scales for blues and for rock and for jazz. You use scales on everything, all kind of scales, you know. So, but pentatonic specifically, you use tons of pentatonic over jazz tunes and stuff like that. It's, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and learning how to apply those 5 notes or that 5-note shake, whatever you're playing, over the chord shape that is under it, begins to define what the intervallic value of each of those notes are, right? And so if you already have that under your hands, there's so many possibilities from a musical vocabulary standpoint that you can apply to, you know, to apply yourself.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Stuff never ends, really.
It never really does. You know, as a young player, you're listening to jazz and you're gravitating toward the Beatles. What were some of your major guitar influences at the time?
Again, I think my big brother started to bring some jazz records home. I don't know why he did it, but somehow there was some dudes that were listening to jazz. I remember him bringing some Chick Corea records, Kid Jarrett, McLaughlin, Aldi Meola, that kind of stuff. I grew up in the 80s, so I think those things kind of made an impact on me. There was maybe a George Benson record there, Bobby McFerrin even. So I think I started to hear that kind of music, and I think more than anything, the virtuosity kind of really grabbed me. And then what really made a big change to me is that records Friday Night in San Francisco with McLaughlin and Aldi Meola and Paco. That's like the greatest shred record of all time. There's no better shredding than that record. They played their asses off and so fast and also super musical. So that when I started to listen to that, that really kind of changed my mind. I really wanted to play like that. Then I went to see the first jazz concert, real jazz concert I saw was McLaughlin. And again, he plays really, really fast. So
it's amazing.
You know, so when I went home, that was the stuff I kind of wanted to do. You know, I wanted to kind of play this kind of virtuosic stuff, you know. That was the first influence. And also Aldi Meola at the time was kind of, he's one of the original shredders, really, you know.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, the picking technique alone. I mean,
exactly.
So much to learn from the technique.
So after that, I just kind of started to listen to everything. I think Larry Carlton got into the picture because I used to listen to, you know, like the Nightfly record, and I really loved what he did on that record. And then, you know, like Gaucho. Gaucho is not only Larry, but so those things started to just kind of sneak in. I'm trying to think what else. You know, what really made the biggest impact on me was my brother brought Bright Says Life at some point, the Pat Metheny record. And that was cool because at that time I already had a real book, so I can kind of listen to the song and try playing it. But a few years later, let's say it was mid-'80s, when I was starting to get, you know, a little more professional, Chick Corea's Electric Band, the first Electric Band record came out. And that completely changed my life. And at the same time, Pat Metheny Group, Still Life Talking, that record came out. And to me, those are the two biggest masterpieces that influenced my life the most. Those two records at that time. And after that, there was, you know, like Schofield came up with like Blue Matter, you know, and those records with Dennis Chambers and Gary Granger. Stern came up with that record that had Downside Up and Upside Downside. I forgot you know. So then I started to get into that kind of sound, and then the thing that was the most devastating for me is when my guitar teacher introduced me to Holdsworth, and then I got metal fatigue. That was the end of everything. That still is the end of everything.
Yeah.
He pretty much closed the book on that record. That was it for everybody.
Now, did you like the Mahavishnu records?
I never listened to Mahavishnu ever.
No,
I never got into that period of Mahavishnu. But also, in the same time, I got heavily into Van Halen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all the shredders like Steve Vai, Van Halen. Greg Howe was a huge influence on me. Because when Greg Howe came out, it was so hip and nobody was doing it. You know, so I was into all those guys big time.
Even what he's doing now. You know, even like what Greg is doing now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like a mix of weird stuff like that. Where it starts shifting, though, was I was kind of trying to play like that. Like when I first heard Scott Henderson, I was like, oh, this is how I want to play. And then, or when I heard Pat Metheny in the Bright Says Life era, I was like, oh, this is how I want to play. And I tried, like I could never really get close. And then I was lucky. There's this one teacher in Israel that told me, you know, if you want to learn to play that stuff, you need to learn jazz. And I started to study jazz. And then I started to, at some point, there was another teacher that told me, okay, if you want to learn the modern stuff, you should study bebop. Like you really want to know when and this is what we're going back to the conversation about Amos and all those Israeli guys. There's a really good education in Israel. They really kind of put an emphasis on the tradition, you know. And you can't play jazz if you don't know the tradition, if you don't know the language. So I learned that pretty as good as I could. Like, I became like a Wes Montgomery clone, really. And for years, I played my thumb. And I listened to a lot of bebop, Charlie Parker, and all that stuff. I still do. I like it. But that's kind of how it worked its way, It was kind of weird. I was playing Charlie Parker with a Epiphone L5 copy, and then I was playing like Steve Vai with some Charvel guitar. It's kind of weird at the same time,
That's a good segue. Oz, do you remember what your first really? I don't know how to phrase this. I don't know whether to call it your first really good guitar or your first real quality guitar, because all of those have different definitions for different people.
I had guitars that were just either shitty or okay, but I think at some point, I would say my first real good guitar was that Brown Strat that I had, that 62 reissue Strat, because at that point, I already started to have an actual sound, And actually, I moved with that guitar to New York, and my first 3 records I did on that guitar,
It's really interesting because a lot of the influences that you mentioned early on in your development were hollow body players, but you seem to gravitate towards solid body guitars.
I never liked the hollow body sound, even when I played it for years. I played it probably from the age of 16 to the age of 26. Like for 10 years, I probably played the hollow body. I moved to New York with a 175, with a Strat and a 175, but I always felt like the guitar was stopping me from, I don't know, I was never into that sound. It never really felt great to me, and I was never quite into it. So the greatest thing that happened to me was I was playing it all the time. Like I was doing jazz gigs and I was playing all the time. But the best thing ever happened to me, a few years after I moved to New York, I started playing with Gavin DeGraw, the pop star. And we played together for a while. It was kind of from his beginning until he got signed and everything. And it was just me and him every week. That's how he got discovered. And I needed an acoustic guitar. So I went to Rudy's with my 175, Gibson 175, and I traded it for a Guild, Jumbo Guild acoustic, because I needed it. And that was probably the most important move of my musical life in a way, in terms of my gear, because then I only had a Strat, and I was like, okay, well, from now on, I'll play everything on a Strat. I don't need a hollow body guitar. I never really needed one since. It's never really, it's kind of nice to play those things, but I don't feel like I can really express myself the same way. I don't know, it feels like playing on blocks or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Scott Henderson earlier, Strat player, and I know, I can hear a Michael Landau influence in your playing some too, and a Strat player. And then what you have been able to teach all of us with a Strat is that you can really squeeze a lot out of that.
Yeah.
If you work hard enough.
To me, it's more like I play solid. I would say it's solid body guitars, because I play Strat mostly, but I play a lot of Tele. I've been playing Les Pauls on my last couple of records a bunch. I even played my Duo Gretsch. I use that also. It's like, but it's all solid body guitars. Like this thing has a little bit of hole in it, but it's all solid body guitars. So I don't know. I just feel more comfortable with that sound. I don't know. It's just like I like guitar sound on hollow bodies better than on solid bodies better than on hollow bodies.
Yeah,
makes sense.
No, well, I mean, and it definitely comes through in the way you compose music. I mean, the music that you create is very present. It's very upfront. Definitely a solid body influenced direction.
Because I like the sound of blues guitar more than on rock guitar, probably more than I like the sound of Joe Pass. And I love Joe Pass, don't get me wrong. It's just, to me, it hits me in the heart when I hear Stevie Ray Vaughan or Van Halen or somebody just play one note with that tone. I was like, oh my God, Where if somebody a beautiful jazz tone. It's nice. Like if Pat Metheny plays a note, it's gorgeous, but
Yes.
it doesn't hit me the same way. You know, I don't know.
And you've mentioned Metheny a couple of times. He's a player that's never really deviated, right? I mean, he's got his thing, and he does his thing.
But his thing is so wide, you know. His thing
no
is so
kidding.
wide. So he's probably one of the most, in terms of the influences and how much music and genres and stuff he mixed in. It's like unbelievable.
No, I agree. I do hear. I do hear. You know, there's a lot of different type of jazz players, and I want to get to the question eventually about how do you begin to inspire rock players to tip, to tip their toe into the jazz waters. But tell me about the blues. You mentioned Stevie Ray Vaughan. There's obviously a blues influence in your playing. Tell me about the importance of the blues in your jazz context.
Well, I wasn't really aware of much of it, and then again, I grew up in the '80s, so at some point somebody turned me on to. I think Eric Johnson was the first guy, then Jeff Beck. I always knew Clapton. I never was aware of his old stuff as much. I was more aware of his '80s stuff, which I actually really like. I think it sounds best. His best playing actually was done in the '80s into the mid '90s. That's my opinion. Some people will kill me.
No, I agree with you.
Actually, I know. You know who Ross Titleman is? He's the guy that produced all those records from the mid '80s till the '90s, till the blues record that he did. And he's a friend of mine. And I sit with him sometimes. He likes this diner in my block, and I sit with him sometimes. And I always try to pick his brain because he's like this legendary dude. And I kept telling him, I was like, you know, Eric's playing was the best around that time. And he goes like, I totally agree with you, 100%. And he's a guy that produced. If you look at his discography, you'll see. So I don't know. That's my opinion. But what was the question? Getting back to questions, I forgot.
Well, the influence of the blues and where and how that
So then I got turned into Stevie Ray Vaughan, and it's slowly sneaked in, and then it's something that happened to everybody. You try to become like a Stevie Ray Vaughan clone because it's so strong, you know. So it was kind of like I tried to be. I'm not good at copying people, but I tried, and I didn't really do that well with it. I did okay. I tried to copy the tone. I tried to copy the lines, you know, and I started to have a trio gig in Tel Aviv where I played instrumental blues. That's kind of how my band started, really. And I was playing his tunes, but instrumentally. So I realized after a while doing it that I don't know where it's coming from. I don't actually know the phrasing of the blues, where it is, what it is. And there was a good friend of mine in Israel. He came from New York. He's a really great blues guitar player. His name is Ronnie Peterson. So he kind of was the guy that had a lot of knowledge on blues, and he turned me on to a lot of stuff. And then I also started to listen to, at the time there was no internet yet, so videos and read articles. And then I got into B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, you know, all those guys, Hendrix. So I think it was the same kind of idea what I had with jazz. I wanted to play the modern stuff, but I realized that I can't do that unless I learned the tradition, and it was the same thing with blues. So I'm not a blues player, and I haven't got into the blues as deep as I got into jazz, to like bebop, but I try as much as I could to kind of listen to that stuff, and I still do, and kind of get that language, because if you have that language, to me, bebop and blues are like the glue to everything. So because bebop is like the language of jazz, blues is the language of everything, really, rock. So the more you have roots and good foundation in the blues, but in the real traditional blues, not I don't know. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but Joe Bonamassa is a friend of mine. Is a great guitar player, but he's not the tradition of the blues. He's a guy that took a couple of things and put them together and made it his own. The same thing with Stevie Ray Vaughan, really. He took, I don't know, Hendrix and B.B. King and Freddie and Albert King, made it his own. So what I'm saying is you want to go to the source, you know, and learn the source first.
Oz, you pretty much,
you know?
you pretty much did the same thing in your own way, because you have carved out a niche for yourself that, in my opinion, if I hear 5 guitar players that play, say, the same lick that you're playing, I know when it's you.
Wow.
I know your tone by that big 2mm Dunlop pick that you use, your phrasing, the way your fingers connect with the strings. To me, you're one of those guys where if you play one note, I know it's Oz Noy.
That's interesting to me because I don't hear it, but sure.
Well, that's because you're you. But I've seen you play probably 5 years, every Monday night for 5 years.
Yeah,
at least
play more than anybody, really.
So, and I've seen you play in your apartment. I've seen you play other places. Personally, you're a personal friend of mine. I watch you. I watch the way you play, the same way that I would watch Eddie Van Halen play when he played. I was that interested. It was that much entertaining, and I've studied you. And without making it sound crazy or retarded, it's like that. I can close my eyes. You play one note, I know it's Oz Noy. I just know when it's you. And the niche you've carved out in this twisted blues, what you call twisted blues, not really many people do that. So you've taken your jazz and blues rock things, and you've put it into this thing where it's just a little off center, and it carves out a niche that is totally you. And it's just amazing to me.
Thank you. I can say something, if I can say something about it. When I started my band, when I moved to New York, I didn't want to be a solo artist or anything like that. I just want to work as a musician in New York. I didn't care if I wasn't planning on making records, I started this trio, actually, the trio that I started that became my trio here. I started it in Israel. I started it because I used to do a lot of jazz gigs, and at some point I stopped getting called to play jazz gigs, and I wanted to keep playing. So I went to this bar in Tel Aviv that I used to do jazz gigs sometimes, and I was like, hey, if I bring like this kind of blues band, would you let me play? And they're like, yeah, sure. So I brought this blues band, and in the beginning we played like Robin Ford tunes and stuff, but then it became a trio, and we played Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. But what happened was I started to get bored from it. So then I started to bring like all those funk tunes and playing like, Stevie Wonder or James Brown, and it wasn't all instrumental. So I did that for a few months, and then I started getting bored from that. So then I thought to myself, what would happen if I'll just play my jazz vocabulary over that stuff, which is either blues stuff or R&B stuff. And that's what I started to do. And that's pretty much till this day, that's pretty much the concept of my band and of how I play. Like I improvise pretty much using jazz language mixed with the blues language, but the grooves can be anywhere. Like it could be swing, it could be funk, it could be R&B, it could be rock. To me, it doesn't matter. I will still kind of do what I do. So because that's the concept when I was doing those Twisted Blues albums, which I'm actually really proud of, what I wanted to do is I always thought that blues was really limited. There's a funny thing about blues, yeah? Blues somehow stayed super traditional all those years and very sacred. Like nobody really opens it up and do other things with it, which is I don't understand, because with jazz, if that would have been the case with jazz, we would still listen to Charlie Parker and Louis Armstrong now. There would not be Coltrane, there would not be Chick Corea, there would not be Herbie Hancock, you know what I mean? So jazz has developed and keep developing even now. For some reason, blues is just became like this purist music that doesn't open up. There is guys that open it up a little bit, but it's within the same harmony, harmonically it's pretty limited. So I thought for somebody like me that comes from a jazz background but knows a little more about the blues and also has that kind of tone and stuff, it would be cool if harmonically I can kind of open it up. And that's what I did on those records. That was the idea of those records, really, to take like existing forms meaning, like a rumba or a 12-bar blues, or I don't know, I forgot what else I did on those tunes, but takes that kind of tradition and harmonically expand it, and also break the rules a little bit, where, I have a blues in one of the records that is 6/4 instead of 4/4 or 3/4, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. It exists a little bit with the Hendrix music, but harmonically, none of those guys were knowledge enough to open it up. So that's kind of the story behind it,
Yeah.
So, Oz, you mentioned the importance of being able to go back and understanding the influences of the influence.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the importance of Django in your jazz study. I mean, how far? Because you mentioned Wes Montgomery, you mentioned Joe Pass. I mean, how important was Django?
He was never a real influence on me. I'm actually more aware of him today than when I grew up, because it's all Django is a different language almost. The gypsy jazz thing is incredible. It's amazing. I'm more aware of it now than before, and also it's a little bit. It comes from a different place. It's like this European kind of twist on American jazz, and I'm not really sure if it's, to me at the time it didn't sound like jazz. It kind of sounded like jazz played wrong. Now I don't, but at the time, so that's why I wasn't influenced by it,
No, that's completely fair. In fact, I've never heard it described quite so accurately.
Today it blows my mind when I hear it. I was like, what?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But at the time it was really like, I don't know about this.
Well, yeah, me too. Especially when you're trying to emulate it. You're like, where did this guy come from? And then you're thinking about the time period that he created that music, and you're asking yourself, really, where did he come from?
Yeah, and also it's a very deep tradition, and actually that tradition is a tradition that stays pretty strict. Like I've been following some guys, and they're opening it up a little bit, but it's pretty heavily in the traditional still, from the sound to the guitar to the way they pick. And they're like, oh, this is not how it's done. You need to do it this way or that way. So it's fine. I'm totally cool with it.
I got to ask you a question though. You cultivated all of this jazz knowledge, and you obtained all these jazz chops at a very young age. You accomplished a lot in Israel prior to moving to New York, and you moved to New York. When you moved, was the goal to work as like a I'm going to play straight up when I get to New York, or how flexible were you when you moved?
The goal when I moved to New York was just to play. Doesn't matter what, where, what style. Just wanted to freaking play. That's it, and work and just get something going here. That's it. I didn't care about the stylistically. I didn't, because I could do both, because I've been doing studio work since I'm 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been playing pop and rock since I'm 13, and I played a lot of pop gigs in Israel. So when I moved to New York, I was professional. I wasn't really good at it, but I was professional enough to hang in a session or whatever. So I didn't care when I moved here. I just wanted to be here and play, and play good music. I didn't care if it was jazz or blues or R&B or singer-songwriter. It was just for me to play, To be totally honest, today I'm the same way. Nothing really changed.
I remember you telling me years ago, Dave, if you ever want to hire me, just pay me whatever the band gets, and I'll play with you. And I was floored by that. The fact that I could get you to play a bar gig with me for $100.
Yeah, I love playing bar gigs.
Yeah, it was.
I have no problem with that stuff at all. I remember there used to be a period where I used to do club dates, like those American weddings.
Yeah, sure.
I've never done too much of those. I was always kind of like a sub in a couple of bands, so I used to have drops of the gigs here and there, and I always liked it. The people that did it regularly, they hated it. It fried their brain. But for me, it was like, I'm going in. most of the time there's good bands. Sometimes there were amazing bands. Really, I got into bands that were incredible.
Yeah.
But you play R&B or for funk or all that stuff. What's wrong with that?
I think the regulars don't like it because they don't like dressing up in tuxedos and suits, and
I don't like that either. But
no, but who does? Nobody does. But that's the bad part: the traveling and the suit that you have to wear. But the playing, that's the best part of that, and the food you get to eat, and you play good music with a great band.
But that's how it is in every type of tour that you do in life. The bad part is the traveling and the setting up and the moving around. And then when you play the gig, which is an hour or two out of the day, that's where you have fun.
Yeah,
that's
of course.
Exactly right.
That's like goes for like every gig that you do in life. You know, every tour that you do, it doesn't matter which one.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question in the chat from a regular Headstock Harem. Headstock Harem, thank you for being here. He says, Oz, what was your first guitar? Do you remember what your first guitar was?
My first electric or just first guitar? My first guitar was a really, really crappy nylon string guitar. I don't remember the name, but it was some Israeli company, and I still have that guitar in my dad's house. And the neck on this thing is square and wide. So even today when I hold it, I was like, how the hell could I even hold a chord? It's just the worst thing ever made, you know?
But you still have it.
I have it. My dad still have it. It's awful. But I don't know. It's still there. That was my first guitar. My first electric guitar was some copy of Les Paul. It's called Seville or something. I don't know. It was a really cheap copy. And one time I did a little gig with friends in some school, and it fell and broke into pieces. That was pretty much it.
That can still happen today. I mean, with the real thing. So
after that, I got one of those Ibanez Roadstar guitars. They were actually nice. And after that, I got a Charvel. That was nice. They're nice. They're not nice, you know. Like now, I wouldn't touch a thing like that. But at the time, for a kid, it was fine.
Yeah, but you know. And I don't think any of the people in our chat know this, but a lot of them are like big Van Halen fans.
Sure.
And they would love to know and maybe see your Ernie Ball.
Oh, I have. That's the only guitar I kept. I bought that guitar in Israel a few years before I moved to New York, and that's the only guitar I have that is still, you know, that I still own, and I would never sell it. It's an unbelievable guitar. The only problem is it's kind of hidden with a bunch of cases here.
That's okay. But yes,
the shit.
Oz Noy has a red Music Man Eddie Van Halen.
And I use it. Whenever I do recording sessions when I need like some more like a modern sound, or if I have to really rock kind of more modernly, that's what I use. It's the best.
It's a great guitar. I've played that guitar. It's beautiful.
It's absolutely great.
I gotta ask, you know, what made you want to purchase that guitar to begin with?
Well, I was living in Israel. I was doing pop. I was, you know, I always did jazz gigs, but I play with, you know, a lot of those, a bunch of those, like singer-songwriter, like famous singer-songwriters in Israel. So I was playing with them, and I was doing a lot of TV stuff too. And I just needed another guitar. I wanted another guitar, and at the time, I remember the options were either the ones that I was looking at was a Valiart, like that kind of like Steve Lukather kind of vibe, or the Van Halen. And I remember it was just when those Van Halen guitars came out, and also there was the Nunu Betancourt Washburn. That was another one. Those were like at the time, and I remember going to those stores, and I remember having those three guitars at home, and eventually the Van Halen. Thank God I kept the Van Halen, not that other crap.
Yeah. Well, you know, that guitar is worth a lot of money right now.
It's still as good as, it's one of the best guitars I own. It's like a brilliant instrument, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oz, I've got to ask you, you know, a lot of our audience, they're rock players. Okay. And if they were going to tip their toe into jazz waters, where would you recommend that they start? How would they start? What advice would you give to them?
You know, I think there's a misconception about a lot of stuff that has to do with jazz. I think learning, let's say, more advanced harmony and melody, let's say, you know, harmony meaning like chords and scales and all those jazz movements. That stuff happens in all sort of music. It's not only jazz, you know. The thing is, the only way I know how to, I know how to teach it, or how most people teach it, is through jazz, because it's associated with jazz. So I think you don't have to worry about learning jazz, and you don't have to play the style. You just have to learn. Like when you start studying jazz harmony, you're just expanding your, you know, your interest, like your knowledge in harmony and melody. And that's the only way I know how to develop that. It's through jazz. But you don't necessarily have to be a jazz player to learn it. That's like the misconception. If you want to be a jazz player, you have to learn the jazz language, which is, that's a thing. You know, you have to really listen to the records, and you have to learn, you know, Charlie Parker, Wes Montgomery, all that stuff. That's a lifetime thing. But if you just want to learn how things work, you can learn jazz harmony and you'll be fine. You don't have to learn the actual language. It'll be nice if you learn a couple of Charlie Parker tunes just to see how things work. But in general, it's not that you have to become like this diehard jazz guy, you know? Most of the stuff that I teach, when I teach people, you know, a lot of it, like it relates to everything, to different kind of music. You know, if you choose to use it playing jazz, then sure. But, you know, there's enough of those jazz movements that are happen, jazz harmonic movement that happen in rock or prog rock, all that stuff. That's, you know, that's been around forever.
So Hugh Caldwell says that everything that people need to know is found on your album Schizophrenic. So thank you for that, Hugh.
Oh, thank you.
It's a great album. You know, it's the first one I bought.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Oz, how important is this? And this is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but how important is it to understand the intervallic value of notes against chords played? So if you've got rock players that play a lot of 1-4-5, and then understanding how that 9 fits against each of those chords, or how that 7 fits, how would you encourage a player to pursue that path of understanding what intervals mean when they are put on top of chords?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think if you don't know that, you're always going to be limited. You know, there's always going to be some limitation, and you'll know it. You go like, oh, this is all I can do. I don't know how to get out of the boxes. I think it's not hard to learn. I think it's important. You just have to learn it, you know, and I teach it all the time, but look, I've been doing those. But first of all, people can take private lessons with me. You can just go on my website. That's easy. But so we can do one-on-one. But I started 2 weeks ago. I started to do those online master classes that I'm going to do for a couple of weeks and take a break, and then whenever I have material, I keep doing it. So if they want to join that, because the first one I did just talked exactly about this stuff. It was about the blues and about exactly this. They can join that. You know, it's all my social media, and they can see. At some point, I don't know when, I hope, but at some point, those things will turn into be like actual lessons that they'll be able to buy on my website. I don't know when and yet, but so that material will be available eventually. But in the meantime, either take a private lesson with me or join those master classes, because I talk about it, all the stuff that we're talking about. That's the stuff I talk about all the time.
And that's an important point. And Ben Coombs, our distinguished moderator, is posting links to Oz's website and how you can register for and sign up for private lessons with him. But understanding interval value in music is extremely important. It erases all the mystery behind everything. You want to play Lydian, you understand that sharp 4 is the mystery note, right?
Exactly.
So it begins to erase all of these unknowns for rock players and me as a rock player. If I can get my way through a jazz gig or a fusion gig, then anyone can, I assure you. But understanding the intervallic value of how all of that works together is absolutely imperative. And Ben has again posted links to Oz's series.
I'll say it again. You don't have to worry about learning jazz. Jazz could be for a rock guy. Jazz is like the swear word. It's not jazz. You're learning music, and you need to learn how music works. And to learn how music works, you can learn it from classical music, but that's limited, and that's really hard. And you have to really learn classical music. But with jazz, if you learn a little bit of jazz, but you learn how harmony works through jazz, because that's modern harmony. That's, jazz took classical harmony and moved it to the next level, pretty much. Like, took it to the next level in a way. So you just need to learn it, and to learn that. And if you learn it through jazz, you're still not going to be a jazz player unless you really want to learn the language of jazz. So it doesn't matter. You just learn it to learn music. You just have to think about it as music,
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So that's pretty much it. I think it's a lot less threatening than it seemed, because you see all these jazz guys do all this stuff. It's like, I don't like it. It's not about that at all. It's about understanding how modern harmony works versus modern scales, and how it works with rhythm and all that kind of stuff.
And that's a key takeaway, guys, from this point. So all of you guys that are watching, you're hearing this concept of harmony, how all of this applies. That's a key takeaway. So if you've ever sat in with a jazz player, it can be very intimidating. But when you start to deconstruct how all of these things work together in the context of harmony, then it can begin to make sense. And it really isn't rocket science. It really is music, right? So it becomes a medium of expression, and you learn how all of these intervals help you to better express yourself against the chord you're playing on top of.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
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 Oz, you play. I mean, there are so many things that you play on that fretboard, but the one thing that still absolutely blows my mind when I see you play, you do this lick where it's ascending and descending all in the same riff. Yeah. Can you show us that? Can you maybe show us?
Sure. It's kind of funny. The last masterclass I just did on Saturday, I just showed the concept. It's really, it's hard to see together. All it is, I can just show you the concept. I don't have an exercise for it or anything. It's just an idea. What it is like, let's say we have a C major scale. Yeah?
Yes.
So I try to lead into a high note and end with a pinky. Yeah? So I'll just make it really simple. C major scale. And now I have those 3 fingers free, correct?
Yes.
And once I hit here, this is sustain, and then I have all these other fingers to play with. See what I've done?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very simple concept. Been doing it forever, but that's all it is.
That's pretty amazing. It really, I know you say that's all it is, but to us mere mortals, that is pretty incredible.
Well, here's where it gets more involved, is where when you play tunes that are not one chord tunes. You know what I mean? When you play a tune that is the harmony is moving, and then you move with a harmony, and you keep this going. So it's almost like you have a high note, and then you play. It's almost like you play two voices at once, but not really. It's
Right.
just you have a sustained high note that highlight a whatever note from a chord, and then you play lines on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'll just give an example. I don't want to get jazzy on you guys, but you can do it on every type of music, really. But if there's a song called "All the Things You Are," and it's this. So those are the changes: F minor, B flat minor, E flat 7, A flat 7, D flat 7, G7, C. So if I just do this, you see what I did? Like I went over the changes with that
Yeah.
concept, and that's where it gets a little more intense. But that's where it gets cool also. So, you know.
Man, it's incredible. It's like I said, it's just highly entertaining to watch.
Well, you know, and I'll say one more thing, you know, and this is something that I was, again, I'm not trying to, this is something that I've been talking about in those master classes that I've been doing is, you know, that stuff applies to everything. This movement, that happens in pop songs for freaking 100 years, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not new, or like 5-1. That stuff is not new. It's like those movements are, you know, traditionally happen in certain standards, but you can find them in everything. You know, Billy Joel songs, Elton John, rock songs. You know, it's just everywhere. You know, so it's not. It's just nice to know what to do on that kind of stuff. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Oz, I've got to ask you an education question. So, if some chords, whether they were root string or fifth string chords that every rock player should learn, to broaden their chord vocabulary.
Say it again.
I mean,
what are the what?
So, if you were going to make a recommendation to rock and roll players and say, let's expand your chord vocabulary. 6-string roots, 5th-string roots, things that are really familiar to you as rock and roll players. Here are the 5 chords, 7 chords, 10 chords that you should focus on to expand your chord vocabulary. What advice would you give those players? Major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, minor 7 flat 5. Diminished, yeah.
I don't work like that, and I don't think that way. So it's hard for me to even because I don't teach that way. It's hard for me to even give advice like that. The bottom line is there's only 3 chords in the world, really. It sounds kind of, you go like, oh, well, really? But yes, there's a major chord, a minor chord, and a dominant chord, and everything else is an extension of those chords. So if you know a major chord and you know how to add a major 7 into it, or a 9 or a 4, then you got all those fancy chords right there. Same thing with a minor. If you have a minor chord, you can add a major 7 to it, or 7 or 6 or 9. Again, you have those fancy chords. Same thing with a dominant chord. So that's how I look at things, you know? And it's a lot simpler than it looks. It's just like, if you don't know where things are coming from, and you just need to remember shapes, and you don't know what those shapes are and why they are, of course it's going to be hard, and you'll lose your mind because it's too much. But if you understand what the basic shape is and where everything else around it is, then it's pretty easy, you know?
That is phenomenal advice. Major, minor, dominant.
Yeah.
Major, minor, dominant, everything building off of those 3.
Yeah.
Phenomenal advice.
Yeah.
So all of you that are watching this video, major, minor, dominant. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And if you don't know what those are, just learn what that means. Learn what major, minor, and dominant means first.
Yeah.
Well, you just Google the chord formula.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and most rock players know, what makes a major chord and what makes a minor chord. They may not know what makes a dominant chord, but you
They
can
know
Google
what
it.
makes a dominant chord, of course. They play blues. Blues is all dominant chord.
Well, yes, it
amen
is,
to
but
that. Yeah.
but a lot of people that don't necessarily know, they know how to play it, but they don't know what they're playing. A lot of people
Well, that's
don't.
a problem. Most people, if you don't know what you're playing, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
That's incredible advice, and it was simplified by someone that does it so well. Major, minor, dominant, and the formulas for those chords are extremely important. And Oz just mentioned the extensions of those, and then how you can make that a 7 or a minor 7 or a 9 chord. I mean, once you have the foundation of that, then you can move to the next part.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 7/8 says, I don't know what I'm playing.
Yeah, but 7/8, he can play a D chord, but doesn't know it's a D chord. So,
Well, he's a great player.
But-
He's a great
but
guitar player.
Oz, let me tell you something. This guy,
He's a great guitar
if
player.
you saw him play, you'd be like, he's one of the best rock players I've ever seen in my life.
I'm not. I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
A lot of people that don't know what they're doing, and they're doing it great.
Yeah, he's really good.
Sure.
So that's great advice for all of us, because we were talking about harmony earlier, and harmony is always relevant to how it all works together, right? So you're playing intervals over chords, and that becomes harmonic. So understanding the intervals that you're playing over those chords is really important, and a good starting point would be major, minor, and dominant.
That's not only starting point. That's the end point also.
Amen to that.
You know what I mean? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, amen to that. So there you go.
Yeah.
So Oz, can you do you have some guitars near you, like your major gigging guitars? You have some stuff you could show us?
I got stuff that's just sitting here that I work with.
Yeah,
Well, that's my Gretsch. That's my Duo Jet.
that's Cadillac green, right? Because it's a little darker.
It's a Steven Stern, so it's the shit. It's the it's a
Custom shop.
It's
Yeah.
a master build. Yeah.
Right.
I have that. What else? I have my Les Paul here. That's a Red Eye collector's choice.
Oh yeah, love that
That's
guitar.
beautiful.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful guitar.
And then I'm just gonna show what I have here. This is a John Cruz telly, like a rosewood telly, John Cruz.
I'm having one of those built for me right now. It's kind of like the Robin Ford guitar.
I guess, I don't know, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that, and then I have
Way to
this.
blow me off.
This is another John Cruz Strat.
Beautiful.
I have a very similar model to that, except I have a maple.
And then I have, believe it or not, I have a 7-string Ibanez guitar here that I mess around with sometimes. And I have this guitar that I love. It's a Tressard baritone.
Oh wow.
Killer.
Look at that. I've never seen that one.
Oh yeah, you don't know Tressard?
I know the guitar, but I've never seen it with you.
Yeah, no, I had it for a while. It's great. I like playing baritone guitar, so.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's what I have here. I have a bass here also, but I have some stuff. I have another maple telly and 2 other maple Strats, and I have the Van Halen guitar. I also have that. There's a company in Israel called Macmul Guitars. They make really
Sure,
really
yeah. Pete Thorne has one.
They made me this guitar it's like a telly with 2 P90s. It's really good. I actually used it on some pop session yesterday or 2 days ago. It's great.
You and Pete Thorne both have one, and they're
Yeah,
great.
and also Shanks, John Shanks.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're great guitars.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
He has everything.
I got some acoustics and whatever.
Do you still have that Sunburst 69 Strat?
It's a 68. No, I don't. But Jason Smith is building me one like that right now, just like a copy of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that guitar.
Yeah,
That's what made me get. This is a
know.
Jason Smith as well.
Oh, nice. I sold this guitar to a friend of a friend in LA, so I know exactly where it is, and I can always have access to it. You know.
Mm-hmm. And the red guitar you still have, the one that, Eric Johnson wants.
Yeah, everybody wants that one. Yeah, I have that one.
Yeah, Oz has a Dakota Red 60. It's a 68.
It's all custom shop.
Maple fretboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice guitar.
Yeah,
That was my favorite guitar of yours as well.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, so I have that one, sure.
And what are the amps that you're using these days? You still using the Two Rock?
Yeah, I have a TS1 and my main amps are I have a TS1 and a classic reverb.
Yep.
And then I have two Gain Masters. One sits in LA, and one is my old Game Master that became a combo now. That I have. So I have those, and that's pretty much my main amps. And then I have a 100-watt plexi and a 50-watt plexi Marshalls that I use. So it's either that. Then I have I have a Princeton and a Deluxe, like black faces.
Mm-hmm. Did you sell your Super Reverb?
Yeah, I did. I didn't want to, but with me, if something doesn't get played, after 2 years, I just get rid of it. I can't let the thing sit. It was just sitting in my closet. I wasn't using it for literally for 2 years. I wasn't using it, and after 2 years, I was like, well, if I ever need another one, I can.
Yeah, they're pretty easy to get.
Yeah, so I just sold it, and so far I haven't needed another one. I have a friend of mine in LA that's got a great one that I always play when I'm there, and he's thinking of selling it. So if he ever sells that one, I'll buy it from him just because I know it. Mm-hmm. But I have right now, especially, there's too many amps and too many guitars. I don't like to have stuff sit around when I don't use it. So I find use for everything, but if I have more than what I have now, it's gonna sit around,
Well, you seem to be using everything you have now.
I do, but there's still things that end up sitting around for a while sometimes. So, but right now there's no gigs or anything. So,
do you still have that exotic?
Yeah, I have that exotic guitar, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use it more. I kind of made the different changes on it because it's kind of. I did this one pop tour, so I needed something with a humbucker, like a Strat with a humbucker. So it had 2 single coils and a humbucker in the bridge. That worked good. And now I put 2 single coils and a telly in the bridge.
Oh, no kidding!
Nice, yeah. And then I made it a little bit more like a slide guitar, just to kind of get a different kind of vibe.
Raise the action a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, just to kind of have something like that,
Mm-hmm.
That guitar is a guitar that I kind of change for stuff that I need that I may not have in other instruments,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know what else I have and I'm waiting for my 335.
Beautiful guitar. Yeah, I you're gonna love it when you get it.
I hope.
Well, you've played Warren's 61, haven't you? Warren Haynes' guitar?
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, good stuff.
I think when he recorded with me, he brought that guitar because he brought a red guitar.
Yeah, it's a red 61.
But it's a real 61.
It's a real, yeah. His new. If he's in New York, he takes out the real one.
Yeah, well, the real ones are the shit. I play the old ones all the old ones that I played I really like, but I don't know the custom shop stuff. I hope
you're gonna love it. If it's anything like mine, you're gonna love it. It's amazing.
Okay,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah. Well, I've owned a lot of 335s, and this one is the best one I've ever owned.
That's good to hear because I played one recently and I was like, nah. The reason I never bought a 335 because every time I played those custom shops, not only they didn't sound great to me, they didn't sound like they're in the ballpark of what it's supposed to sound like. To me, I don't know. So I never, and they're kind of bulky and big, so I never got into.
Yeah,
I
right.
would buy, if I had the money, I would buy an old one in a heartbeat. But it's like, a friend of mine's got a mint 64. It's gorgeous, but you're talking about like
$20,000.
no, it's more. It's like he said that he can sell his today for like 28.
All right. Well.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm not into spending that kind of money on instruments.
Yeah. No.
Right.
No, I
He
agree
actually,
with
I was doing a project here and I needed a 335. He goes like, "Oh yeah, take it." Actually, I'm not gonna mention names, but he said like, "Oh, take it. You can use it and then return it to me." And I was like, "I'm not gonna take a $30,000 guitar for a session. If something happens to it, I'll,
Yeah. Slit your throat.
yeah, I'll be screwed." You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Good stuff, man. So, even though, New York City is closed down, you're not gigging at all, are you?
0.
Wow. And what are you doing right now? Are you in the middle of doing a new record, or what are you doing as far as sessions?
I get like either ups and downs. Sometimes I got a bunch of sessions, just from home. I do sessions from home. Like last 2 weeks, I actually had a lot of sessions, which is kind of weird. It suddenly felt like old days where I was actually working,
Mm-hmm.
So it happens then, and then I teach a little bit here and there. And now I'm busy because I do those master classes every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that's for True Fire, isn't it?
No, it's just me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's it, really. Other than that, I'm waiting for things to open up. There's nothing else we can do, really.
Boy, I know it's like that for everyone.
Really
It's
sucks.
crazy. Really crazy.
It really is. It's like that for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, wondering what's going to happen.
Well, eventually things will open up. But, I've done stuff on and off. Like I've done some sessions in studios, a couple of gigs outside or whatever. But it's just not fun. It's really stressful. And it's just not fun. It's just like it's exhausting,
Yeah.
So I even said no to some stuff recently because I was like, fuck it. I'll just wait for things to get better because I don't really enjoy it. It's just,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that.
Cool. Well, not really cool, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. That's right.
So let's tell us a little bit about your latest record.
It came out in last year. It came out in March. It's It's volume 2 of. I released a record in 2019. I released a Boogaloo record.
Great record.
It's called Boogaloogaloo.
Yeah, great record.
And then it was supposed to be a double album because I recorded a lot of music.
Mm-hmm.
But then we decided to split it to 2. So we split it to 2, and then the second part of it came out last year in like November, I think. I recorded a few more tunes to make it a full album, but that's the story. And that's it. And it's out, and I was supposed to tour pretty much from September to the end of the year, but everything was shut down and nothing happening. So that's it. But the record is still out. Go buy it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. Some people say it's the best record I've ever done. So
Now, who's on that record with you?
Oh boy, it's 3 different rhythm sections. One is Willie and Dennis Chambers. Another one is Vinny Colaiuta and John Patitucci, and another one is Dave Weckl and James Genus. And then there's guests on it. But this record, most of the guests were like my jazz star friends, It's a little more jazzy. So actually, Wallace Roney, he died from Corona, but he was like the greatest trumpet player. He was on it. Chris Potter's on it. Adam Rogers, my friend Adam Rogers, the guitar player, he's on it. I don't know. A bunch of people on it. I can't remember now.
Yeah, just those guys, Dave.
Yeah. Isn't that enough?
Those guys. Yeah.
Isn't that enough? That's insane. Oz Noy's phone, his phone number, his phone is probably blowing up with the craziest people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool.
and not to sound cocky, but I've been playing with most of those guys for so many years. It's kind of like, you know.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, when I used to see you every Monday night, and you played with Anton Fig and Will Lee, where your rhythm section, that was just the most fun stuff to watch.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a real band. You know?
I mean, guys and girls in the chat, Anton Fig and Will Lee was Oz Noy's rhythm section.
That's pretty phenomenal. I mean, Will has been in Oz's picture for a long, long time.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's phenomenal to listen to that. But you know, also keep in mind, like, you know, when we began this conversation, Oz was talking about how he wanted to be a drummer. There's this incredible rhythmic nature to his playing that is very percussive. He chooses the best rhythm sections to play with naturally.
Yeah. And all he has to do is worry about himself, because he doesn't have to worry about what the drummer's doing or the bass player's doing, or even if he uses the keyboard player. Doesn't have to worry about anything but himself, and that is the best way. If you're on a stage playing, that is just the best way to play, where you have nothing but yourself to worry about.
You know, but that comes. It doesn't come automatically. You have to establish some ideas of what the music is. You know what I mean? Once you establish the ideas of, okay, this is the concept of the music and this is how we're gonna play on it, then you don't have to worry about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Like,
Crazy Cook. I'll tell you about this guitar in a little bit. Let's just focus on Oz Noy for a bit.
I got like a couple more minutes because I gotta run after this. But
Okay, well we're just about done anyway.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. So actually, do you want to just say goodnight? Is that are you want to?
If anybody has another question for me, it's cool. If not, then it's up to you guys.
Yeah. One more question from the chat. I mean, what's new in 2021 for you, Oz?
Good question. Nothing that I can. Look, there's a couple of projects. I always do stuff. So there's a couple of projects that are kind of on the back burner that I'm working on. There's some band, some project in LA with some guys. Actually, Mono Neon is a part of it, and a bunch of other guys.
Wow.
This singer from Vintage Trouble, he's like a great singer from this rock band. It's a cool project. We made a full record that it's done. We just have to mix it, and we've got stuck with it a little bit. That's one thing that sits on a back burner. My side project, Ozone Squeeze, that's the band that I have with that singer. We've been trying to make another album, but it's been going really slow. I'm working on some tracks for that. Maybe not this year, but next year something will come out. There's some girl that got involved that's a great singer. So, you know, there's things like that happening. There's two guys that I played in a park with in the summer. We made a jazz record. That's going to be probably coming out sometime. So there's little things. I'm not planning on making any of my own solo albums anytime soon. So that's the only thing that's actually got nothing to do with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much it. And other than that, I don't know. I'm just trying to play better guitar, practice, and play better guitar.
Amen.
You know?
Amen
well,
to that.
We will keep in touch with you, Oz, and
of course.
Maybe at some point we'll do another one of these, and once you have something new to talk about. Boner Jam says, putting Rory and Laney to bed. Have a great night, guys. Dave, find me Universe. Great show, gents. Thank you for the super chat, Boner Jams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And just for Crazy Cook, this guitar is a master built, custom shop 69 Strat that was built by Jason Smith. It is black over pink paisley. It is roasted maple. It's roasted maple neck, roasted alder body. Very lightweight, great sounding guitar, and that's pretty much it. So there you go on that guitar.
Cool.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Oz Noy, thank you so much. I know that you pretty much don't say any no to me. Danny Alexander with the super chat says, "Great show, guys. Thank you so much." Oz Noy, again, thank you so much.
Thank you
for this.
Thank you.
I know you're always doing something, and for you to take up the time with us, it's
Okay.
great.
Thank you for having me.
Ty,
you.
always great working with you.
Pleasure.
Next week we have a great show as well. There's a Van Halen, an Eddie Van Halen tribute record that came out, or that is coming out next week. It's a Long Island tribute to Eddie Van Halen. It's got 17 songs on it. It's got songs by Larry Mitchell doing a cover of Hear About It Later, Randy Jackson from Zebra, a bunch of bands doing covers of Van Halen songs. We are going to have Fader is the Man, who is the producer of the record. Larry Mitchell will be here. Randy Jackson from Zebra will be here with us. It's going to be a great show. Check it out. And we will see you later. Bye.
Bye.